Who are they? The most unsuccessful models in the last quarter of a century. The foreign automotive publication Avtamir has compiled a rating of the worst. Yes, they do not claim to be absolute. Surely the audience will have arguments in support of this or that model, exactly as counterproposals will appear, which cars are missing in it. So let's figure it out together. Hello friends, we are on the channel about cars and these are the 20 worst cars in the world. So, the 20th line in Mitsubishi Space Star. As they say, you can't enter the same river twice. Space Star Reincarnation. A modern reading of the classic Mitsubishi call. But alas, a successful compact city car and a Space Star are completely different fields of berries. Its modern version is expensive, there are noisy and voracious engines under the hood. Today, the external beauty of electronic assistance will not surprise anyone at all, especially if this beauty requires sacrifices from the owner, primarily financial. As a result, a failure in the market and the 20th line of the rating, just above the Aston Martin Signet. Don't get into your sleigh or don't be an Aston Martin. The car is completely devoid of market sense, rather a curiosity in the history of AM, a company that has never chased after mass buyers. And the very ideology of Citycar sounds dissonant when it comes to Aston Martin. In fact, this is a golden Toyota AIQ, premium materials and an Aston Martin filling in 6 vintage C. As a result, a city car with a minimum emission of CO2 became gold and all the owners of Aston Martin just smiled. And on the 18th line BMW X6, and perhaps this is the most ambiguous car in this rating. No, there are 6 of them, a good car, and the X67 is generally phenomenal. But it's hard not to agree with Jeremy Clarkson and Stop Gear. It was he who called BMW and 6 the dumbest car in the world. You may ask why. So because in combination, an SUV and a coupe already in fact does not make any sense. Big cannot be small, one excludes the other by definition. Speaking sensibly, if you need a classic Bavarian SUV, this is the X5, and if you want something smaller, there is something to choose from in the BMW lineup. I wonder what they will say in 25 years about BMW X7. On the 17th line, Maybach is 5762. According to Mercedes, the new models were supposed to be a great return of the legendary brand to all surroundings, in the glow of the century and glory, but it turned out to be a failure. Few people wanted to buy a luxury car for a lot of money, which looked too much like the then Mercedes C-Class. The main complaints were about the appearance of the car. The design did not cause an unambiguous reaction, it did not have what is required for a luxury car. 100% hit is absolute, the wow effect suffered significantly. As a result, the car was withdrawn from sale, unable to compete with the more experienced and successful Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Just above Sangha Crodius. As they say, as they met, so they conducted. According to the clothes, this was enough. The extravagant idea of the Koreans to make a luxury yacht out of a family minivan simply failed. There were few willing people who were in their right mind, and besides, and accompanied by their family, would agree to get into a car more like a hearse. SsangYong dealers were probably as surprised as the customers who refused to line up for such a family value. In addition, Eurodius was heavy and poorly managed. On the 15th line there is a Jeep Compass, and not all that glitters is gold. And not all Jeeps are the same, in the sense that not all of them are SUVs. Compass is one of them. Built on the same base with Dodge Caliber. This is a lightweight crossover with a high price tag. Competitors bypass it in almost all indicators, including the quality of the interior and the inappropriate appetite of the engine. As a result, a failure in the market and the closure of sales. We're moving on. After the Swedish Sub came completely under the control of General Motors, introduced in the 2004 year, the Sub 9 and Mix turned out to be both the most expensive SUV of General Motors and the most expensive sub. Luxuriously finished, it was sold mainly in North America, as well as in the East, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The car became a clone of many American mid-size SUVs. It was even called the Trailblazer for its obvious resemblance to the Chevrolet Trailblazer. Most likely, the absence of his face, which was unsuccessfully compensated by a very high price tag, led to the fact that the off-road Saab was simply not the lot. And here he is on the 13th line of the Dodge Caliber, which ambitiously declared that the Caliber would become a competitor to Golf. He is bigger, better equipped, and he has his own style. But it turned out, not this or that. The car was originally conceived as a crossover, but later it was decided that the brand needed a passenger car. As a result, a solid equipped interior, full of stuffed electronics, but the suspension was more suitable for American roads. And despite the common platform with the Jeep Compass and the brutal angular design, the Caliber was simply not a crossover in its configuration. From there, the crash. Next is the Nissan Micra Si Plus Si. When the car appeared, there was a joke: it looks best in pink. And this was the main advantage of the micro-based Cabrio. One of the journalists aptly noticed that the Micro SI Plus is one of the few cars that does not have advantages. She looked too infantile, she had weak engines, body sores appeared immediately after the roof was removed. Without it, the rigidity of the structure was low. The Japanese quickly realized that the car had screwed up and the Micro SI Plus SI had simply evaporated. The 11th line and Peugeot 1007. With all its creative findings, the car did not take root. The main attraction was the very wide sliding doors. They operated from an electric drive, but the work of such a sesame on wheels turned out to be traumatic. The doors could injure, for example, the hand. The owners found out by using a beer can as a potential obstacle. It's like an asphalt skating rink has passed through it. Even worse, in severe frost, the guide rails on which the doors walked could simply freeze and it was impossible to enter or exit. They got dirty and soiled their clothes. They were also difficult to maintain, and in general the car was too expensive. The top 10 is opened by Tetroensia Triplurial. And the toy car was hopelessly impractical. First of all, the removable cover of the convertible, which, according to the designers, was supposed to become the pride of the owners, turned out to be a real nightmare for them. It was godlessly leaking due to poor sealing. Even worse, the top didn't want to fold. This operation had to be planned several days in advance and spent hours on it, not minutes. But the crown of the design turned out to be that there was nowhere to remove the disassembled arcs. In short, the perfect car for the African desert. But it didn't have all-wheel drive. Maybe this is the case. On the 9th line is the Chrysler Crossfire. And this is an unhappy child from a marriage of convenience of Chrysler and Daimler. Today it is very difficult to make a successful car using components prepared for another car. In short, the Crossfire was created using almost all the details of the Mercedes SK. The result was a car with a bad suspension and a bad steering system, which simply failed in sales. The 8th line and the BMW of the 7th series. Another example is that the devil is in the details. With all the exciting appearance and performance, many customers, having tested the prototype of the AI drive-in for entertainment system, went to dealers with conviction. Mercedes bought their C-Class. Despite its innovation and coolness, the system was not brought to mind. First of all, it concerned the menu components. They distracted a lot of time and were inconvenient to use. Over time, the Bavarians solved this problem and today's drive is much simpler and friendlier. On the 7th line Lexus C430, the Japanese assumed that the mid-size coupe would compete with Mercedes C, but it did not happen. First of all, it was not a luxury car. The quality of finishes, interior materials and equipment corresponded more to business class. Otherwise, the convertible was a reliable and trouble-free car with real Japanese quality. But it still didn't work out and sales didn't go. A line above the Jaguar of their packs, in short, too expensive Ford Mondeo. The model was created when the Jaguar brand was still part of the Ford Corporation, along with Land Rover and Aston Martin. The Americans tried to promote a respectable brand by offering a cheaper model that was supposed to attract younger customers, so their pack looks like a sketch of a gentleman's XJ, which is unconvincing, and there were few hunters to buy this executive class car that would drive like everyone else. And their Stipe was built from the same components as the World Ford. As a result, short-sighted marketing played a negative role. Igor's clients got used to the best and believed that the brand's car should be one and only of its kind. The top 5 is opened by the Chrysler Point Cruiser. He appeared on the wave of retro-style fashion. Nice appearance, functionality, despite the modest dimensions. The Point turned out to be a very hardy horse that could even be used as a station wagon. At one time, the Cruiser was considered in the European market as a serious foreign car, inexpensive and compact. Another thing is that the suspension was not ready for European road conditions. Chrysler itself said that in order to adapt the model to European standards, thicker springs and stiffer shock absorbers should be used. Also, against the background of European classmates, the Salon was losing heavily. As a result, like all the previously listed models, this car failed. Ali Bra is on the 4th line of lunch. Against the background of Fiat, another Italian Libra seems to be a handsome man. A total of 165,000 copies were built. The car was on a successful Alfa Romeo chassis 156, but due to unsuccessful suspension settings, it drove, alas, very badly. In addition, the salon equipment, the radio, navigation were annoying. All this worked with brakes and did not add optimism. As a result, they simply forgot about the car. Fiat Multipla opens the top 3. The whole team of presenters and Top Gear at one time called the car of the year, and there was something for that. Big trunk, good suspension, pretty solid engines. Separately, we must say about the capacity of the cabin. The car was built on the basis of Fiat Bravo and, thanks to the width, 3 people could sit freely in the front row. But the design is not saved by the high side windows of the Panorama. The front end seemed to have been started twice, although from the point of view of automotive eccentricity, the multiplave may well have collector's value, precisely because of its strange appearance. On the second line is a smart photo. The appearance is original, flattened, cool. Perhaps that's what was most attractive about this typewriter. Everything else was just lousy. Terrible interior quality, rigid suspension, incredibly weak noisy engine paired with a robotic transmission with one clutch. Despite the small volume, the engine could hardly be called economical, and the car itself drove well only on smooth asphalt. As a result, a complete failure of sales. Well, here's the first place. It has a Nubaira Daewoo on it. Nubair is the fruit of the joint efforts of several European teams. The British occupied the whole structure as a whole, the Germans conjured with the engine, and the Italians made the body design. So a car appeared from the world along the thread, which replaced the Spera model in the Deo line. Thanks to the European experience, the car looked quite solid, which was used by marketers who sold a novelty like a limousine at the price of a compact car. The trouble was that the Nubaira was morally outdated even at the designer Coleman, since it was built on the chassis of the Opel Ascona time. Nevertheless, it sold well and the principle of cheap angry fully justified itself. But still, the company considers this model to be the most unsuccessful in its history. Well, friends, that's all for today. Write in the comments what you think about this rating and which car you would add to this top 20. Let's talk together. Well, don't forget to put a like for your efforts and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. You were on the Car channel about cars. See you soon.